If there was ever a moment Nadia felt her heart turn to glass, it was the night she scrolled through her husband's phone and found voice notes from another woman, calling him my husband. Her fingers trembled as she pressed play, the soft voice of a stranger filling their bedroom in the dead of night. Sleep well, my love. Don't worry, she will never suspect anything. Tomorrow, I will wear that red dress you like. Nadia froze. The phone screen glowed against her skin like fire, and in that instant, her marriage of 10 years crumbled in silence. Desmond, her husband, was lying just beside her, snoring with the heavy, careless sleep of a man who felt safe. His chest rose and fell, warm and steady. She turned her head and looked at him, the man she had cooked for, prayed for, carried 2 children for, defended before her family. The man who once swore he would never hurt her. She wanted to shake him awake, to scream, to throw the phone into his face. But instead, she swallowed the scream. She set the phone back gently, like it was glass, and turned her face to the wall. Tears spilled quietly, soaking her pillow. The next morning, the sun spilled through the curtains like nothing had happened. Desmond kissed her cheek lazily before heading to the shower. The same lips that had kissed another woman's body. She forced a smile, and he didn't notice the stiffness. "Don't forget, we're going to my mother's house this weekend," he said, adjusting his tie in the mirror. She nodded. Her silence wasn't weakness. It was power. Because from that moment on, every word, every gesture, every fake smile she gave was not for love. It was for war. 4 days after that night, Nadia walked around the house with a silence that even the walls noticed. She still cooked Desmond's meals, still ironed his shirts, still laughed at his weak jokes when the children were around. But inside, she was a graveyard, dark, quiet, and filled with ghosts of the promises he had broken. Every time she set his food before him, she saw the lipstick stain at the back of his ear. Every time she washed his clothes, she perceived a feminine perfume lingering in the fabric, a scent that wasn't hers. Every time he left the house claiming he had late-night meetings, her phone buzzed with his location pinned miles away from his office. It was like discovering a stranger was living in her husband's skin. One Thursday evening, after the children had gone to bed, she crept into the sitting room where he had left his phone charging. The blue glow of the screen lit her face as she opened WhatsApp. The first chat was Amira with a heart emoji. Nadia's chest tightened as she opened it. "Amira, baby, I miss you. That woman doesn't even deserve you. Desmond, don't worry, my love. Just be patient with me. You're the only one I want. Amira, when will you tell her about us? Desmond, soon. Very soon." Nadia's hand shook. Her lips trembled, but she kept reading. There were photos, Amira in skimpy dresses, pouting into the camera, blowing kisses. There were voice notes of him whispering sweet things, the same words he once whispered to her. Nadia pressed play on one. Desmond's deep voice filled the room. "Amira, you are my peace. You make me feel alive. Nadia, she's just a shadow now." A shadow. She closed her eyes and let the words stab her. When Desmond walked into the sitting room, he found his phone lying exactly where he had left it, untouched, or so he thought. Nadia was in the kitchen, slicing onions, her eyes red. He didn't know the tears weren't from the onions. The next weeks were worse. She discovered there wasn't just one Amira. There was Sonia. There was Ivy. Even a widow named Bridget. For different women, each with their own place in her husband's life. He had turned their marriage into a marketplace, giving his love away in pieces, while she stayed at home raising his children. But Nadia never confronted him. Instead, she began to collect evidence, screenshots, voice notes, call logs, bank alerts of money he secretly transferred. Every lie, every proof, she stored in a hidden folder, locked with a password only she knew. At night, when he turned to her for intimacy, she let him. She lay beneath him, staring at the ceiling, while her mind drifted to the folder of secrets she was building. She was no longer a wife, she was a hunter, and she was waiting for the perfect kill. One evening, as she folded clothes in the children's room, her 8-year-old daughter, Luna, looked up and asked softly, "Mummy, why are you always sad these days?" The question pierced her heart. She forced a smile, touched her daughter's cheek, and said, "Mummy is not sad, my love. Mummy is thinking." But that night, when everyone slept, Nadia sat alone in the dark sitting room, hugging her knees. Silent tears rolled down her face. She wasn't crying because she was broken. She was crying because she finally knew that her marriage was not worth saving. What was left now was revenge. The worst part was not the betrayal itself. It was the ordinary mornings that followed it. Desmond still ate her food with the appetite of a king. He still left his dirty socks scattered carelessly on the floor, expecting her to pick them up. He still called her my wife when he wanted to sound affectionate, and she still played along. The house became a theater. She was the lead actress, pretending to be a devoted wife, while every bone in her body wanted to scream. Some nights, she would lie in bed, staring at the ceiling fan as it spun lazily above her, and ask herself questions that burned. Am I not beautiful enough? Was I too quiet? Too loyal? Too available? What does Amira have that I don't? She hated those questions because they made her sound desperate. And she was not desperate. She was angry. But still, they came, sneaking into her mind like thieves. One Friday afternoon, she caught her reflection in the mirror while dressing. Her hair was tied up in a rough bun. Her face looked older than her 34 years. Was this what marriage had done to her? Had she disappeared into motherhood, into laundry and cooking and school runs, while Desmond was out there chasing women who painted their lips red and wore dresses too tight to breathe? She sat heavily on the bed. That was when the thought crept in, maybe it's me. Maybe I am the problem. Tears welled in her eyes. But then, as if on cue, her phone buzzed on the bedside table. It was a bank alert. 150,000 naira transferred from Desmond's account. The description read, "To Amira." Nadia laughed. Not a happy laugh. A sharp, bitter laugh. It wasn't her. It was him. He wasn't looking for love. He was buying distraction. And each woman was just another item in his cart. That night, she cooked his favorite soup, thick and rich, with goat meat and spices. She set it before him with a smile so calm it frightened even her. He ate greedily, licking his fingers, oblivious to the storm raging behind her eyes. When he finished, he smacked his lips and said, "Ah, Nadia, if not for you, I don't know where I would be." Her smile didn't falter, but inside, a voice whispered, "If not for me, you would be exactly where you belong, alone in your filth." Her body became a battlefield. Half of her wanted to confront him, scream, throw his clothes into the street, call his mistresses one by one and spit fire into their ears. The other half was ice, calm, patient, already plotting a revenge so clean it would slice deeper than any outburst ever could. On lonely nights, when Desmond returned late smelling of cheap perfume and lies, she would go to the children's room and sit by their beds. Watching them sleep, breathing in their innocence, she would remind herself why she couldn't just pack her bags and leave. Her children didn't deserve scandal. They didn't deserve whispers at school, neighbors gossiping. That's the child whose father chased the mother out. If there was going to be a scandal, it would be on Desmond's head, not hers. She would carry her dignity like a crown, and when she finally struck, the world would see him for what he truly was. But the emotional tug-of-war did not end. Some mornings, when he hugged her from behind as she stirred the pap for the children, she felt her heart betray her. For a moment, her body leaned into him. For a moment, she remembered the early days, their laughter, their long walks, the first time he held her hand and promised her forever. She hated herself for remembering. And then, she would see another text, another transfer, another missed call from Amira, and the softness in her heart would turn to steel again. One Sunday, in church, the pastor preached about forgiveness in marriage. Nadia sat in the pew, staring at her husband as he lifted his hands in fake worship. Her chest burned. Forgiveness. How do you forgive a man who strips you of your peace and wears it on another woman's body like perfume? How do you forgive a man who smiles with you in church but whispers love into another woman's phone at night? Her fingers clenched the hem of her dress so tightly that her knuckles turned gray. Forgiveness would not heal her. Only justice would. And justice, she decided, would not come with tears or quarrels. It would come with silence. With planning. With a WhatsApp group that would change everything. That was the night she opened a fresh notebook and began to write her plans. And slowly, her tears dried up. The day started like any other. The children had just gone off to school, their laughter trailing behind them as the school bus pulled away. Nadia stood by the gate, waving until the bus disappeared down the street. When she turned back to the compound, Desmond was already dressed in crisp white shirt, polished shoes, smelling of aftershave that wasn't meant for her. He looked like a man ready to conquer the world. She looked like the woman left behind to sweep its dust. "Don't forget," he said casually, slinging his car keys around his finger. "There's a dinner tonight with some of my business associates. You will need to be there. Dress well, and don't embarrass me." Nadia's lips tightened. He didn't say please. He never said please. But she nodded anyway. The restaurant was one of those places dripping with wealth, glass walls, golden lights, waiters in suits moving silently like shadows. Nadia had dressed carefully, choosing a simple but elegant gown, her hair neatly wrapped, her jewelry subtle but dignified. When she entered beside Desmond, she thought, just for a moment, that maybe tonight he would remember she was his wife. But Desmond's eyes had already begun to wander. Across the room, at a large table filled with men in tailored suits and women laughing too loudly, sat Amira. Yes, Amira. The very same Amira whose voice notes Nadia had listened to in the quiet of her bedroom. The same Amira who had called her husband, baby, and my peace. And now here she was, sitting with Desmond's business associates, wearing a red dress so tight it looked stitched to her skin. Desmond's face lit up like the sun. He guided Nadia to the table, but his eyes never left Amira. "Gentlemen," he boomed with pride. "This is my wife, Nadia." The men nodded politely. The women gave small smiles. Amira's smile, however, was wide, almost mocking. Throughout the dinner, Desmond showered attention everywhere except his wife Nadia. He filled Amira's glass before touching Nadia's. He laughed too loudly at Amira's jokes, leaning close so their shoulders brushed. He even wiped a drop of wine from the corner of Amira's lips with his thumb, while Nadia sat there, frozen, her own wine untasted. Her throat burned. The humiliation was thick, suffocating, and she could see it in the glances from the other women around the table, glances that said, "This poor wife. She is invisible in her own marriage." At one point, Amira leaned across the table, her eyes locking on Nadia's, and said sweetly, "You're so lucky to have a husband like Desmond. He takes care of everyone around him." Everyone. The word was like a knife. Nadia smiled faintly. By the time dessert was served, her humiliation was complete. Desmond had spent the entire night flaunting his mistress before her, as though daring her to speak, as though he was certain she never would. And he was right. Nadia didn't speak. When they returned home, as Desmond snored on the bed in drunken satisfaction, Nadia sat on the edge, staring at him in the dark. Her heart was a stone now. This was no longer about pain. It was about power. The man who humiliated her in front of strangers would be disgraced in front of the world. She picked up her phone, opened WhatsApp, and began to scroll through her contacts, family, friends, colleagues, church members. One by one, she imagined them in a group together. One by one, she imagined dropping the truth before all of them at once. The vision was clear. The revenge would be sharp. The world would know. And this time, it would not be her humiliation. It would be his. The morning after the dinner, Desmond strolled into the kitchen humming, his shirt unbuttoned at the top, smelling of expensive cologne. Nadia was by the stove, frying plantain for the children's breakfast. The oil sizzled, popping tiny burns onto her arm, but she didn't flinch. "Last night was great," he said, pouring himself a glass of juice. "Everyone liked you. You kept quiet, and that's good." Her hands tightened around the spatula. Kept quiet. That was all he saw her as, a background decoration, a shadow in his life. She forced a small smile and said, "Yes." It was nice. He pecked her cheek, his lips brushing her skin without tenderness. "That's why I married you, Nadia. You don't give me troubles," she nodded, swallowing the bile in her throat. "No trouble." Not yet. Weeks passed. On the surface, life carried on as usual. Nadia took the children to school, went to the market, cooked his meals. In church, they sat side by side, holding hands like the perfect couple. Desmond grew more careless. He stopped hiding his phone when he came home. Sometimes, he even laughed at messages in front of her, knowing she wouldn't dare to ask. But Nadia's silence was not submission. It was a strategy. Every night, when he slept, she quietly unlocked his phone and transferred screenshots into her hidden folder. The folder grew fatter with evidence. Amira sending selfies in hotel rooms, Bridget begging for transport fare, Sonia promising to come by as soon as possible. Voice notes of Desmond calling every one of them my future. His future. That word alone was enough to break her once. But not anymore. Now, she looked at those messages the way a surgeon looks at a scalpel. Cold, precise, waiting for the moment to cut. Sometimes, she caught herself almost breaking character, like the night Desmond staggered and drunk, smelling of perfume that wasn't hers, and dropped onto the bed without a word. She stood over him for a long time, her eyes sharp, her fists clenched. She imagined pouring hot water over his face. She imagined screaming until the neighbors came. But instead, she covered him with a blanket, and in the morning, she served him tea with honey. He thought her silence was weakness, but her silence was the rope tightening around his neck. One Sunday evening, they visited Desmond's mother. The old woman, with her sharp eyes and sharper tongue, looked Nadia over as they entered. "You're too quiet, my daughter," she said, shaking her head. "Be careful. A woman who is too quiet loses her husband to louder women." Desmond chuckled, sipping palm wine. "Don't worry, Mama. Nadia knows her place." The room erupted with laughter. His brothers, his cousins, even his mother chuckled. All at her expense. Nadia lowered her gaze, her face blank. But inside, something burned hotter than fire. "They will all know," she thought to herself. "Every single one of them will know." That night, as they drove home, Desmond placed his hand on her thigh and said, "Don't mind Mama." She was joking. She smiled faintly and replied, "I know." Then she turned her face to the window, hiding the storm in her eyes. A few months later, she had gathered enough evidence to bury him twice over. But still, she waited. She wanted the stage to be perfect. She wanted the audience to be complete. She wanted the shame to be so loud it would echo in his bones for the rest of his life. And slowly, the plan began to form. A WhatsApp group. One carefully built group where Desmond would be stripped bare in front of everyone who mattered. But she didn't rush. First, she perfected her smile. The smile that would keep him blind to the war brewing in his own house. It began on a cool evening. The children were in the living room, watching cartoons, their laughter rising and falling like music. Desmond had gone out again, his usual excuse, business meeting. Nadia sat alone in the bedroom with the door locked, her phone heavy in her hand. For days, the idea had circled in her mind like a restless bird. But that night, it finally landed. She opened WhatsApp and tapped on New Group. Her thumb hovered over the screen. What should she call it? Not too obvious. Not too soft. Something simple, but sharp enough to sting. Her lips curled into the faintest smile. She typed family and friends. A harmless name. A welcoming name. The kind of name that would make everyone join without question. Then came the real work. Who to add? Her first thought was family. His mother, his brothers, his cousins. The same people who laughed when he mocked her silence. They would see that silence was never weakness, it was strategy. Then her own family. Her sisters, her cousins, her uncles. The ones who thought she had the perfect husband. They would see the truth with their own eyes. Then friends. Church members. Colleagues. Even a few of his closest friends. The ones who always called him responsible and disciplined. One by one, she jotted down their names. And by the time she stopped, there were nearly 50 people. Her heart raced, but her hand was steady. The next step was the evidence. She opened the hidden folder. It was like opening a wound. Screenshots of his midnight, "I miss you" messages. Bank alerts to Amira, Sonia, Bridget, and Ivy. Voice notes of women giggling, saying, "Don't worry, she will never know." His own voice, deep and careless, calling Amira my piece and Nadia a shadow. Each piece was a weapon. But she couldn't just throw them all at once. She had to arrange them like a story, like chapters in a book that would leave no room for doubt. She began to create folders on her phone, labeling them Amira, Sonia, Bridget, and Ivy. Every mistress had her own file. Every file had its own receipts. It was almost beautiful, the way the truth fit neatly into digital boxes. At one point, she paused, her hands trembling. This was real. This was no longer a thought in her head. Once she pressed send, there would be no going back. Her marriage would be finished. Her children would hear whispers. Her name would be on every tongue in the neighborhood. But then she remembered the dinner. She remembered Amira's red dress, Desmond's thumb brushing her lips, the laughter at her expense. Her trembling stopped. She whispered into the empty room, "Let the world laugh at him now." The final step was choosing the day. It had to be a day no one would forget, not a random Tuesday, not a quiet Friday. She settled on a Sunday evening. Why? Because by then, everyone would be home from church, scrolling through their phones, unwinding. The timing was perfect for gossip to spread like wildfire. Sunday evening, she decided, was the day Desmond's kingdom would fall. For the rest of the week, she played her role to perfection. She cooked his meals. She warmed his bed. She even laughed at his stale jokes. On Saturday, when he came home with a new shirt smelling faintly of feminine perfume, she complimented him. "You look handsome, Desmond." His chest swelled with pride. He didn't know he was dressing for his own funeral. And so, the stage was set. Sunday evening was only hours away. Nadia stood in the kitchen that morning, slicing vegetables for stew, while the children played in the yard. Desmond was getting ready for another meeting. "Don't wait up," he said, adjusting his wristwatch. She smiled sweetly. "I won't." When the door closed behind him, her smile faded. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. It was time. Nadia went into the room, locked the door, and sat on the bed, her phone in her palm, her heart steady now. She had rehearsed this moment in her mind 1,000 times. Tonight, her silence would end. She opened the WhatsApp group and began to add the contacts of the people in the list she had made days before. She named the group Family and Friends. His mother, his brothers, his friends, her family, their pastor, his colleagues. Even Amira, she had found and added her number too. The stage was set. Her thumb hovered. Then she began with, "Good evening, everyone. I don't usually speak much, but tonight, I have something to share. Please be patient and read carefully." Almost immediately, replies began to pop in. "Good evening, Sister Nadia. Hope all is well. What is it, my daughter? Go ahead, we are listening." Nadia took a deep breath. Then she dropped the first screenshot. It was a message from Desmond to Amira which read, "You are my peace. Nadia is just a shadow now." The group went silent. The three dots of people typing blinked, disappeared, blinked again. Before anyone could reply, Nadia sent another, then another, and another. Photos of Amira in hotel rooms. Bank transfers to Sonia. A voice note of Bridget giggling, saying, "Don't worry, she will never know." Then came Desmond's own voice, deep, unmistakable. "I love you, Amira. Please be patient. Nadia is nothing but history." The silence in the group turned heavy, like a funeral. Finally, a flood of messages. "Desmond, is this true? So this is the perfect husband you people were praising? Nonsense, man. Brother Desmond, I am ashamed. Deeply ashamed." Nadia's hands didn't tremble. She sent the final blow, a carefully compiled folder. Receipts of 4 mistresses. Labeled clearly Amira, Sonia, Bridget, and Ivy. The group exploded. Some sent shocked emojis. Some cursed him openly. Amira left the group in shame. Sonia followed. Bridget as well. Ivy stayed silent, but her number betrayed her. Through it all, Desmond's phone began to buzz in his pocket while he was driving. He frowned, brought it out, and within seconds his face drained of color. "What is this?" he muttered, his voice shaky. He scrolled, his hand trembling. No, 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 no. He quickly parked by the roadside and dialed Nadia's number. "What have you done, Nadia?" he screamed over the phone. Nadia replied calmly, "I only showed them the truth. That's all." Desmond screamed, his voice cracking. "You have destroyed me. My family, my colleagues, my church. Everyone is in that group. Do you know what you've done, Nadia? I gave you back what you gave me, which is public humiliation." Nadia replied calmly and ended the call. Desmond's phone began to buzz in his hand. His mother, his boss, the pastor, everyone was calling his line. He sank into the car seat, burying his face in his hands. And Nadia? She walked away. The next weeks were chaotic. Desmond's job summoned him. His respectable image was shattered. The business partners he flaunted before Amira cut ties with him. His mother wept, calling Nadia day and night, begging her not to leave the marriage, begging her to forgive him. But Nadia had no interest in forgiveness. Her dignity had returned. Her silence had spoken, and it was louder than any scream. At school, the children heard whispers, yes, but whispers of their father's disgrace, not their mother's shame. Nadia made sure they were shielded, reminding them daily, "You are not your father's sins." Desmond tried to salvage things. He bought flowers, gave long apologies, begging on his knees. But it was too late. One evening, as he knelt before Nadia with tears in his eyes, she finally spoke words that ended everything. "You broke me, Desmond. And then I rebuilt myself from the pieces. But I built a version of me that doesn't need you anymore." And with that, she walked away. Weeks later, Nadia stood at her window, soaking in the peace she once craved for, when her phone buzzed. It was a message in the very same WhatsApp group. It was from her cousin Eva, which read, "Nadia, you are stronger than all of us. You've given every silent woman courage. Thank you." Nadia looked at her reflection in the glass. For the first time in years, she saw not a tired wife, not a shadow, not a woman erased. She saw herself, and she smiled. Because sometimes, revenge isn't about destroying someone else. It's about reclaiming yourself. And in the ashes of her marriage, Nadia had finally found her crown.
Subscribe, like and share this story with anyone struggling with infidelity in their marriage.